everybody, it's Mally, and I am here to talk to you about GMing for tabletop role-playing. I happen to be GMing a game of Vast Grimm, which is a new game that has launched on GameFound. The physical copies have not gone out yet, but you still can late pledge, and the PDFs are available for any late pledgers. And I think that you can buy them on itch as well, so that information is available if you're interested in playing. I highly recommend it. The game is absolutely fucking awesome. But I have had a few players talk about how they're interested in GMing, but like they're intimidated or they don't know how to plan a session and they're not sure how GMing really works. So I thought I'd make a really brief video to show you how I'm going to plan out my next session. So obviously I'm not posting this video until after my players play the session, so you can see the stages of how this works before, or technically after, they've actually played it, so you can see how well they did, because so far they've missed a few things, which is fine, but they've missed a few things. But you can also see how easy it is to plan out your own adventures, because it's really not that hard and it's really not that mystical. You just have to have an open mind about a lot of this stuff. So to start out with, Vast Grimm has these adventure seeds in the back of the book, which is really cool. So you roll a die and that's what you get, and you make the adventure out of that, which is kind of neat. The other thing they did was they had a contest for Miserable Ship Jam, and you could make your own adventures for Vast Grimm, which I really wanted to do until I realized you actually had to like illustrate and have things in there, and that's just not my forte. I would love to be a person that could do those things, but unfortunately I am not. And I don't think that damages me too much because I just really like storytelling and I think I'm pretty good at that. But drawing, not so much, not my thing. But I did have something I really wanted to enter for that particular prompt, and we are doing this entire session based on the prompt. So to start with, the prompt is the players find a ship and something has evolved from a fridge left long unattended on the ship. Essentially, that's the prompt. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can do something with this. So my idea was to have some sort of goo that's been sitting in the fridge for so long and has evolved into a sentient form of life. So that totally makes sense to me. And then I also want to look at my session in forms of how other sessions have gone, because I try to change it up a little bit so they're not always doing the same thing every time. Because number one, I think it's boring. And number two, I want to see how they react in different situations. So that's just me. The last two sessions they had were basically one super long session. It was broken up into two. And that was Texas Chainsaw Massacre homage. And that Texas Chainsaw Massacre homage was a lot of stress and screaming and fighting and scariness going on. So that's sort of the opposite of the feel that I want to create for this particular game. I want to do something very different. So in regard to that, I'm still doing an homage because that's just a thing that I like doing. So if I have something that has evolved in space over a long period of time, there's only one thing it can be. And some of you have like the exclamation point over your head right now. Yeah, it's gonna be Red Dwarf, because fuck yeah. I love that show. It's one of my favorite shows on the BBC. And yes, I realize Doctor Who is fantastic, and I'm also a Doctor Who fan. Red Dwarf, man, though. Seriously, I love Lister. He's fucking fantastic. So we are doing a homage to Red Dwarf in this particular session. So the other thing we're doing with this is there's not going to be any fighting in this session. I decided that there's no need to fight. Nope, they're just going to have to do some puzzle solving and just do things in character to get to know their characters and figure some stuff out. So it's also going to throw them off a bit because they haven't done anything like this before. And again, I like to keep them guessing because it's more fun. So the first thing I'm going to do, like I always do, is I'm going to pull up Notepad. And you will see I have it fairly quickly in here. So I'm going to put that right there so you can see what I'm typing. So we're doing homage to Red Dwarf. The first thing I put in is what ship are we working off of? And we are working off the mining ship Red Dwarf. So any other information I have on the ship, I would have up there. If this was part of a larger campaign, I would probably have a lot more stats and specifics on that. And later on, I'll be making a map for the Red Dwarf as well. So the other thing is we're doing this. Who do we need on here? Personally, I think Holly needs to be the person that I pull over for this particular session. The reason for that is in the last game, I pulled in Pinky from Doom into Texas Chainsaw Massacre because I'm allowed to do that because it was fun. But they actually needed the extra help because they were fighting against these dudes that were way too overpowered for them, number one. But they needed that third person in there for that extra interaction, and they kind of needed a third target. So that's why they had that extra NPC help. In this particular instance, there's not going to be fighting, so they don't really need the extra NPC help. There's also a possibility that a third player will be joining based on work schedules. So there's going to be another person in here that I don't normally play with. It may be our first session. The other thing that I want to keep in mind is, since Holly's an AI, Holly's not going to be all that useful, and that's probably going to be a good thing. So that's kind of what we're going for. So Holly is who we're bringing over, and we're not going to bring over anybody else. Technically, I could probably bring over Rimmer as the hologram, but I feel like in a puzzle-solving situation, kind of like this, Rimmer might be more detrimental than useful, so I'm going to leave him out of it, although he would be a fun character to play for this. So we're just going to have Holly. So we have a ship's AI. Normally, at this point, again, I'm telling you how I create these sessions. Any NPCs I create for these sessions, I put in specifics like what are their hit points, what are their personality traits, what do they look like. In this instance, I don't actually need to do that because I know everything about Holly because I love Holly. We're also doing early Red Dwarf Holly, not Hilly Holly. And if you've seen the show, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen the show, don't worry about it. But we're doing early Holly, not Hilly Holly. So we're doing Holly on this one. And I'm just not adding anything else in there. That's kind of the important thing. So the other essential character we have in here is going to be our sentient goo. Because the goo is going to take the place of Cat. Because the goo has evolved in a fridge for the last 3 million years. And if you know the game, I mean, that's totally something Lister would have evolving in his fridge over the last 3 million years. So it totally fits with everything. So the goo's been evolving. The goo is sentient. So that means the goo has to have the ability to communicate. So pondering how it's going to communicate, I also don't want it to be terribly easy, okay? They're also not going to know that the goo is sentient. I'm not telling them that. They are going to know it's gone through 3 million years of evolution. If any of my players have seen Red Dwarf, they may have a pretty good guess that the goo is sentient, but it's not going to be super obvious because there's different ways this story can play out, and I want to see how they play it out. So the goo is sentient, but it's not going to be obviously sentient. So it's got to have a form. Wow, I can spell things, I swear. It's got to have a form of communication. So probably the best way to communication, I think, is by refracting light. So the goo is extra shiny and glittery. I like glitter. So we're going to have glitter goo, because that just amuses me beyond all possible comprehension. Yeah, we're going to have glitter goo. So we're going to have glitter goo. The glitter goo is going to have to be able to communicate with light reflection. And I think it should also change colors based on its mood. Like mood slime from Ghostbusters almost. So purple is my favorite color. So purple is happy. Haha, let's try that. And let's make orange angry. All right, so if the goo turns purple, the goo is happy, in a good mood, willing to communicate. If the goo is orange, it probably still could communicate, but it's going to be grouchy and not happy about it. So anytime the goo turns orange, any attempts at communication, the difficulty rating is going to have to increase. And they're going to have to actually state they're specifically trying to communicate it. And this is one of those things that's really important. I want the players to figure this out. I want them to know how to do it, but as a GM, I have to step back and let them do what they say they're going to do. Because if I try to force them to do something, it's not their game anymore, and that takes a lot of the fun out of it, I think. So I can't, if they don't specifically say, can we talk to it, I'm not going to do anything. If they say, can we talk to it, and they both roll a presence of like 4 or something, they're still not going to be able to talk to it because their presences aren't high enough. So a standard difficulty rating of 12 is what they're going to have to roll to figure out that it's sentient and they probably can communicate with it. If it's purple and they have a high enough roll, they will figure out they can communicate with it. And then I'm adding in a second roll difficulty, I think, on this one. So hang on, DR12, when purple to know they can communicate. And then, let's see here, odds on a D6 to successfully figure it out. So the goo can answer yes, no questions. Okay. And then we're going to say it's going to be a DR of 18 when orange to know they can communicate. Wow, communicate. I wrote communication up there. Ha! I typed too fast and I'm not thinking. So DR 18 when it's orange because it's angry and it doesn't really want to talk. And then let's say 1 to 2 to successfully communicate on a D8. So we're going to make it a lot harder for them to do it if they've angered the goo. Other things on the goo. If it's orange, it's caustic. So it is going to cause damage. 1d4 damage every round on skin. And let's see, 1d4 every round on skin, and then 4 rounds, no cleanup, drops armor 1 tier. So they're going to have to clean the goo off. So orange is caustic, and caustic goo on the armor is problematic. But purple does no damage. Because purple is in a good mood, so it doesn't want to hurt you. So we've got the stats on that. And it's goo, so it's going to be able to move pretty much anywhere and expand out. So we can get pretty much all over the ship. That being said, they have to be able to damage it. So I feel like the goo can be damaged by cleaning supplies. Which also means I will have cleaning supplies stashed in rooms all over the ship. So we've got that. So that being said, we need to have some kind of central conflict. So now we have to find out, what do we want to do for the conflict? Again, in this case, for what I have set up, I think it should be fairly easy. So Holly wants the goo off the ship because the goo fucked up the ship. That seems pretty simple. The goo wants Holly off the ship because the goo wants to take over the ship and fly the galaxy all on its own. That being said, I think the players should get a bonus if they are able to successfully negotiate a treaty between Holly and the goo, so Holly and the goo can go off together. So if Holly and the goo cooperate, players should get full fuel fill up, 1 month of food, and they should get something else cool. Let's see. Because that's that's going to be really hard for them to be able to figure out that they can do that. Because they may not be able to know that they can do that. A goo pet. Yes! They will get a goo pet. Absolutely. So they will get a sentient goo pet of their very own if they can get Holly and the goo to cooperate. They're going to have to be able to figure out a lot of things to get to that point, but I think that's actually a pretty cool reward if they can figure it out. So yeah, that's what they're going to get if they can get Holly and the goo to cooperate. If they side with Holly, they will just get the fuel, because it's a mining ship. So that's full fuel fill up. And if they side with the goo, 1 month's food. So we've got the reward, and those are essentially the 3 outcomes. They can also leave, but if they leave, obviously they get nothing. And the only thing on this ship are going to be cleaning supplies. So they can fight the goo or not fight the goo. The other thing that needs to be remembered is, because again, I might have a new player coming in. I think what we're going to do is, for the new player, that player is going to have been in the process of putting on an EV suit. when the goo caused the damage to the hull and got sucked out into space. They were able to suit up, but sustained a little bit of damage in that. And also, let's make him completely amnesiac. And Holly was damaged a little bit in that as well. So Holly knows that's a human that belongs on his ship, but Holly doesn't remember anything about him, except his name. So Holly can give him his name and some basic information. And the human doesn't actually remember anything, or the emobot. I don't know what character this person is playing. But yeah, so that person's going to be amnesiac and not remember anything about what's going on. So that person will know nothing, so that takes away from the potential of mystery solving on this. So that's a quick, easy way to bring another character in. Also, if somebody dies, Holly can locate someone floating in space, and we can run it that way. So that's an easy way to introduce new characters, if necessary, into the game. I don't actually see anyone dying. I don't think they're stupid enough to stand in orange caustic goo long enough to die, but we'll see. It's a possibility. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. They do dumb things sometimes. All right, so we have our story, and like, we're not doing anything else on the story. It's very tempting to want to write like this whole novel of all of these things that can happen, and it ends up being way more work than you need to do. And part of it is because your players are not going to get to that much content. They're just not. They're going to skip huge chunks of it and not even get to it. And that's frustrating. And the other thing is, you might want to try to lead them to, hey, maybe you should go into... Yeah, don't do that. Don't be tempted to do that. That's not your role as the GM. Just find out what they're doing and let them know what's happening based on what they're doing. Don't lead them around and tell them what they should do. Which is why I leave these super open. Like, these are the outcomes. This is how it starts. Everything in the middle is totally up to them. That being said, some of the middle stuff is kind of important. So I'm going to go to Dave's Mapper. davesmapper.com. I don't draw. That's not my thing. If I could draw, this would be so much easier and amazing, but I can't. So here we go. Dave's Mapper is this really cool website where you can actually map out your own stuff, and you can do like dungeons and caverns and villages and cities and sci-fi ships, which is what I'm doing here. Now, normally the Red Dwarf is like a massive mining ship, but since they had a massive ship before, I don't know that that's necessary. And also, since the entire crux of this entire adventure is to figure out how to deal with the goo versus how to deal with Holly, I don't think they need a huge ship to explore for this one. I don't really think it's necessary. So we are going to... Basically what you do is you pick a spot and then cycle through on the map parts for what you want. Those are engines. We'll keep that. Mining ships don't need guns. We'll take that off. Okay, there's not a lot there. Not a lot of options on those corners. That's fine. So we'll leave that. Crew quarters can stay there. We do need a command. That actually probably would have worked for command, but that works too. That's not good. This is a mining ship, so basically it should be a hold, I think. So that's just the hold for the mining. Escape pod? Oh, wait, no. We need a trashed hull. There should be one in here, I think. Maybe not. Like, I'm filtering through a lot of things. Maybe. Okay, well, you get the point. You basically pick things on Dave's Mapper, click through, figure out what you like, build the map that you're interested in, or if you're actually good at drawing, draw your own map, because your life would be so much easier. And then I'm going to figure out where the cleaning supplies are, where stuff is on the ship, and that's essentially it. Sessions made. They should be able to finish this in the 2-hour session, hopefully. It might take longer, but I don't foresee it taking that much longer, but they're going to have to figure some stuff out, so it's going to be a little complicated on this. Plus, we are, again, theoretically introducing a third player, so that's going to change the dynamic a little bit. But if you are interested in GMing, this is it. It's really not that much setup beforehand. The key really is keeping your players interested, and I do that by laughing hysterically, and sometimes I'll just ask them to roll die randomly and not say anything, and that freaks them out enough that they're like, oh my god, what just happened? I was like, no, you're fine, nothing happened, and then just don't say anything, and that will freak them out enough that it keeps them on their toes, because I'm a horrible person. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Just keep them interested. I try to change stuff up and give them different things, and like, that's it. So hopefully this was an interesting GM session and you guys see how I create my stuff. So this, by the time this shows up on YouTube, the actual session will have already aired on Twitch. So I will have a link to my Twitch page underneath here somewhere. So that'll be the VOD that should be available. So once you finish watching this, if you haven't already seen the VOD, you may want to see how the players play through it, because it can be interesting. I could be totally wrong about all this and it ends terribly badly. But hopefully they get a goo pet. That's what I want to happen, because I think a goo pet would be really fucking cool. In addition to that, I'm going to include links for Vast Grimm and then the itch download link if you want to check out the downloads for the PDFs and buy those. And that's going to be it. I hope everybody has a fantastic day today, and I hope you've enjoyed this brief little insanity and how to make a GM session.